All right, so another absolutely crazy week, especially for Bitcoin, but even the stock market got hit pretty bad this week. The S&P was down about 2%, the Nasdaq was down about 3%. Even international stocks were down about 3%. The only places that I seen that were good to hide out in were, I know, healthcare. The healthcare ETF hit a new all-time high, and I know my HIG and a couple other of my insurance companies. KNSL's got hit really bad, but HIG hit a new all-time high. So even though actually HIG is by far my largest position for insurance companies, so that helped a little bit in the portfolio. But given how much Bitcoin's down, it definitely did not offset it by any means. But that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about stocks. I want to talk about Bitcoin. But first things first, if you get value out of the video, please like and subscribe. Check out the links below as always. So let's get right into it. Let's start with Nvidia earnings because this was the big news of the past week, at least as far as the stock market goes. Now, as far as Nvidia's earnings go, they released pretty good earnings. And initially, they were actually up quite significantly. They were up, about a little over 5% at one point. But then they went right back down. They were actually down about 10% after that. But they closed the week down a little over 3%, pretty much the same as what the NASDAQ closed down. Obviously, they're the largest position in the NASDAQ, so that would not overly surprising there. As far as the stock market goes going forward, we're at about a 5% pullback on the S&P, about 7-8% on the NASDAQ. We certainly could go lower, but I also look at it as there's a lot of pessimism out there right now, obviously mainly more to Bitcoin, but there's a lot of pessimism, right? There's a lot of pessimism. So if we've gone down as much as we've gone down with this amount of pessimism, I don't think there's that much more to go. Now, the one caveat is, what happens with the Fed going forward? What happens with Trump? Obviously, he's unpredictable. Whether you like him or not, I think it's fair to say that he's certainly unpredictable. So anything really could happen then. But my best guess as what's going to happen is near term, anything could happen, right? Like trying to predict what's going to happen with stocks, with Bitcoin over the next, month or even 6 months or even a year is pretty hard to do. But over the long term, we're talking years, if not decades, it's actually very easy to do. Because when you look at least as far as the stock market goes, they're ending QT next month. We're now at about a 70% chance of a rate cut coming up it's about a couple weeks or so. So that points towards we're getting a loosening Fed. We're probably going to get QE at some point in 2026. And on top of that, Trump's going to be replacing Jerome Powell with a dove. So I think that we're going to see a resurgence. I think near term, we certainly could pull back further, right? I mean, a 20% pullback in the stock market wouldn't be surprising, right? I mean, it happens I think it's 2 to 3 years it happens. I mean, it happened very close this year. I think we're about 19 on the S&P, but probably once a year, you're due for a 10, 15% pullback, which again, we did see it in April, but we're close to the end of the year. So I think that near term, anything could happen. I could just it's very easy to argue that, hey, the economy's weak. They didn't release any numbers in October. There's a lot of reasons to point towards to say, hey, we're going lower, right? Though the AI, there's an AI bubble. I don't think there's an AI bubble. I think that it's certainly overvalued, but the people that are comparing the stock market now to the stock market in 1999, it's just not it's not a fair comparison. For the obvious reason that a lot of those companies were not even profitable. Some of those companies didn't even have revenue. Right? Like some of them didn't even have revenue. Like that is absolutely mind-boggling to compare your average .com stock to Nvidia. Right? Like Nvidia had like $65 billion in revenue. Right? Like comparing them, I think it's certainly fair to say that they're overvalued. Right? Same goes for Palantir. Palantir is more overvalued than Nvidia, arguably by a lot. But to pretend like these are comparable to .com stocks, I think it's insane to do that. I think it's certainly, it's kind of like how the old saying goes, the truth is somewhere in the middle. And I think that's a perfect case of that, in that the people that are claiming that this is, a dot-com bubble, they're overstating it. And the people that are claiming that, oh, no, nothing's wrong, still should be, super bullish and everything, I think it's somewhere in the middle, right? I think that, the stock market, especially the growthier names, certainly are overvalued. But on the flip side, these are very, very, very good businesses, like very good businesses. So they certainly deserve a premium to what we traditionally value stocks as a whole at, right? Claiming that Nvidia, I think it's insane to think that Nvidia should be trading like a 20 PE, right? But should it be, whatever it's at, probably, I don't know, 60, 70, I'm guessing, 44, 43, 44. Right, so it's actually lower. But I don't think 44 is that crazy. I would pay probably 30, give or take, 35, maybe you could make a point. So I don't think it's overvalued, but it's not that overvalued, right? So I think that's pretty much the story when it comes to stocks. Like I said, my best guess is we see weakness in the near term, but, early to middle of next year, we go right back into bull market mode. And I think we're going to see, a 6-month period where the S&P is up, 10, 20%. And then we probably end up back in a similar situation. And not to mention too, we got the midterms coming up next year, right? This is a little under a year away. And it is a virtual guarantee that the Dems take the House, at least one of the two, House and more than likely the House, but possibly the Senate as well, if the economy doesn't improve. And the only way to do that, or at least the easiest way to do that, is money printer go burr, for lack of a better way of putting it. So that's my best guess. I think that near term, we certainly could be in for more uncertainty, more weakness, but medium to long term, I'm still bullish, right? I'm still bullish. Let's get into Bitcoin. So obviously the big question when it comes to Bitcoin is, when are we going to see a bottom? We've gone from 100,000 to about a low of about 81, 82 in a matter of a couple of weeks. Obviously that's a pretty major move. We're down about 30-40% from the top. But the big question obviously is where is the bottom? Where are we going to find the bottom? And my question is, I really don't know, obviously, but the one thing that I pointed out before already is we haven't really seen a major, even like a medium catalyst as to why Bitcoin is selling off so much. Like, we really haven't. The best guess is, number one, people trying to time the market, thinking that the bull market is over. And number two is the AI or the growthier side of the stock market is selling off. And a lot of people, especially in traditional finance, when they hear the NASDAQ is selling off, or the big growth companies or the AI companies are selling off, well, that Bitcoin's the same, so it should sell off too. It's not actually the same, but that's what people think. So that's my best guess. But a very important point here is this right here. Bitcoin weekly RSI hit one of the lowest levels ever. Last time it happened, Bitcoin went up 500%. So the last time was literally at the bottom of the bottom back in 2022. And frankly, it's only happened, it looks like 4 times before, right? 4 times. So this clearly implies that if we haven't seen the bottom, we are very close to it. Like, we are very close to it if we haven't seen it. And that is my best guess. In my opinion, there's only one way that we go significantly lower than we already are from here. And that would be if we see a significant correction in the stock market, which certainly could happen. A lot of people are talking about, an exchange going under, or, the big, lies lately is the FUD around strategy. But I think that that's also a sign that we're close to the bottom. And what do I mean by that? I've heard from a couple people recently. There's one person talking about, oh, yep, this is it. Like Bitcoin's it. It's over. And another one that I heard recently was one of the podcasts I listened to. One of the guys is like, oh, yep, strategy's down, whatever, 60% from its all-time high. I think it's going to zero, right? I think it's going to zero. And what does this remind me of? This reminds me of back in 2022, it would have been, when I'm blanking on that guy's name that went on Joe Rogan, and this almost perfectly timed the bottom, being like, "Yep, it's at 18,000. It's going to zero," right? Whenever you hear these people like, "Yep, it's going to zero," and they're saying it seriously, that's probably at the point to where you've reached peak capitulation. Because if there's people saying that it's literally going to zero and it hasn't gone to zero, chances are that's the bottom. Right? Like, if you're not listening to, Dave Ramsey or whoever TradFi guy you're talking about who said, yep, time to sell, it's going to zero. Like, that is a prime example of, we've reached peak capitulation where everybody who sold is going to sell. In my opinion, like I said, the only way that we go lower is a significant correction in the stock market. That's the only way I could see happening, because the exchanges, at least of the major ones, are, most of them are publicly traded now. So there's a lot more scrutiny on them. When it comes to strategy, I mean, this is something that just boggles my mind about people when they talk about strategy. It's like they think that the company's been around for like a year. And I say that because they're like, oh, it's going to zero. They're going to get margin called. And it's like, how do you not notice that they weren't around back in 2022 and 2023 when Bitcoin went down 80% or whatever it was, and they were just fine, and they're still here, right? So I think that this is another prime example of we are very close to peak capitulation. And people say, what do I do? Do I sell? Do I buy? My opinion is, I think for the average person, dollar cost averaging is the best way of going about it. If I was trying to time the market, now would be the best opportunity, arguably, of my lifetime, at least my lifetime in Bitcoin, because, I've been around since summer, fall of 2020. So almost exactly 5 years. Obviously, buying at the bottom back in 2022 would have been better, but based on RSI, we are very close to that mark. So if you are trying to time the market, now is the perfect time to buy, right? The perfect time to buy. If you're going to be getting a Christmas bonus or money at Christmas, whatever, probably not a bad idea to put some of that into Bitcoin. Just my 2 cents there. So also very big news that is got overshadowed a little bit, but I think it's very big news. It still needs to be talked about. Metaplanet officially has a preferred stock or preferred shares. It's going to be fixed at 4.9%, 1,000 yen conversion price. I don't even know what Metaplanet is trading at. I should have checked that before the video, but long story short here, this is going to be very similar to STRK by the looks of it, because STRK has the conversion price, right? It is the only one of their preferred shares that has the conversion built in. Interest rates in Japan are like another thing I should have looked up, but historically interest rates in Japan have been next to zero. We're talking, 25 basis points, maybe 50 basis points. So to go from that to just under 5%, that's huge. Like, that's huge. The absolute difference between that and what strategy is doing, this is actually bigger, because, I mean, if their interest rates are at 50 basis points, this is almost 10x more interest that you would be getting compared to, the US. It's 3.75, 3.5 compared to, 11, give or take. So I think that this is huge. And I think that, Metaplanet's seen a very large correction recently. I don't own Metaplanet full stop, for the reason being that the only way to buy it in Canada is over the counter, which obviously I could do. I do have a margin account, but I think that that strategy is better. I think that even Strive is arguably has more potential than them. I still do really like Metaplan, and I'm not saying I don't like it, because my thing that I think is going to separate the Bitcoin treasury companies that can stick around and the ones that can't are going to be the ones that can effectively issue these preferred shares. For the reason being that I've said time and time again, but there's a lot of people that still don't know this, these preferred shares, they never have to pay back the capital that they raise for this. So let's say that they raise $1 billion to issue these preferred shares. They don't ever have to pay that back, right? They don't ever have to pay that back. All they have to pay is the coupon or the dividend. That's all they have to pay. And I think that one argument for Metaplanet over any of the other Bitcoin treasury companies is the cost of capital. The cost of capital in Japan is lower than virtually anywhere else in the world. So that is one very good argument for Metaplanet, given that they can borrow money at, let's just say 5%, for use a whole number, compared to 8, 9, 10, 11% for Strategy. Obviously, Strategy has a much larger first mover's advantage, but they also can borrow money at a lower coupon. Now, again, it also comes into play, how much, insider or not institutional adoption and retail adoption we'll see from that, because I think that even though Strategy has to borrow at a higher rate, there's a lot more interest in what Strategy is doing because they have that first mover advantage. But either way, I think that this is very big, and a lot of people think that we're like 6 months into this. Like Strategy issued STRK. What was it, like April, May of last year? Like we are still so early here. Speaking of being early, $15 billion TD Bank projects Strategy will buy over 160,000 Bitcoin in the next year. That would put them over 800,000 Bitcoin by the end of 2026. And not to mention too, that doesn't they're probably going to be issuing a preferred share in Canada. I really hope they do that, because I would buy that. I would buy a ton of it. But what people don't realize is we are still so early. They have more than double the Bitcoin they had a year ago, but the share price is like 50% lower. I think it's actually a little bit more than 50%. Right? So we are still so early that people believe that a company with 300,000 Bitcoin should be worth $400, $500 a share. Now that they have 650,000, they should be worth 170. I think it's fair to argue they might have been a little overvalued then, but I think it's also fair to say that they're undervalued now. I think that Strategy is incredibly undervalued right now. I think that long term, a fair MNAV for them, I think in the near term, it's probably like 1.5 to 2, but 20 years from now, 30 years from now, it's probably like 1.2, maybe 1.5 on the high end. And the reason for that is Bitcoin will always outperform every other asset, at the very least, most other assets. And given that information, well, if they can borrow at 10% and get 15, 20, 25, 30% on their Bitcoin, they deserve to trade at a higher MNAV. So I think it's absolutely absurd to say that they shouldn't be trading above a 1 MNAV. I think getting Strategy below a 1 MNAV is the biggest deal you will ever see, because it makes absolutely no sense that they should be trading below a 1 MNAV. It's just temporary FUD. So I think that Strategy is certainly a buy right now. And the last thing I wanted to talk about here, Grant Cardone. They are loading up on Bitcoin, right? They buy they bought another 185 Bitcoin at 82,500 a coin. So they bought the dip, right? They bought the dip hard. And again, if he's buying hundreds of Bitcoin every month, like He's talking about going public. That's going to be another very, very interesting thing, because I think that's another topic or area that does not really get talked about a lot. I think that what Grant Cardone is doing, like, we might talk about this someday. In fact, I think we probably will talk about it someday as being every bit as genius of a move as what strategy is doing. Because what he's doing is it's actually almost the exact same. It's just with real estate, right? Like, because what he's doing is when he's, let's say he wants to buy a $50 million property, he'll borrow, 60, 70, $80 million. He'll flip, whatever, let's say it's 60 million. He'll flip 10 million of that into Bitcoin, put the 50 million into the property, right? That's what he's doing. And it's absolutely genius. It's just, it's so genius. Arguably it's even more genius than what Michael Saylor's doing. Now, again, real estate's a whole different ballgame. Obviously, there's a lot of different, issues, and you got to deal with, obviously he's not dealing with tenants himself, but someone's got to deal with tenants. The accounting on it is very complicated as well. There's depreciation, there's all that kind of stuff. But I think that what he's doing is absolutely genius as well. And very few people are talking about it, right? He is talking about taking his company public, which I think would be amazing. I would definitely buy it, because I think it's in some ways it's actually better than what strategy is doing, because I don't think it is necessarily, just because at the end of the day, whoever has the most Bitcoin is going to win, and that is strategy right now. But what he's doing is, one of the big criticisms of Bitcoin treasury companies is they don't have an underlying profitable business. But Grant Cardone does, right? They have tens of thousands of units that are making them money every single month. So that is the big difference. And I think that whoever there's a huge opportunity in the market right now, because that first mover situation is up for grabs. And what I mean by that is, we have strategy, we have these Bitcoin treasury companies, but what we don't have is a very large company that is profitable, that is flipping money into Bitcoin every week or every month. We don't have that yet, right? I mean, we have, Block is kind of doing it. Tesla holds Bitcoin, they're not buying. But we don't have a company that is a strategy equivalent, strategy has a profitable underlying business, but it's minuscule. Like it's minuscule. It's like, what, 100 million, 200 million a year? Like it's nothing. I'm talking about a company that is a company that's worth tens of billions of dollars, or even hundreds of billions of dollars, or even trillions of dollars, that is making, whatever, it doesn't matter. But a company that is at that size, that is flipping money into Bitcoin every week or every month, that is a huge opportunity. And Grant Cardone easily could take it. He easily could take it. But whoever takes that opportunity first, that's going to be huge. And that's something that hasn't even happened yet. So anyway, I've gone on long enough here. I'm going to leave it there. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, comment, check out those links below, and stay tuned for more.